Most of us know the quiet exhaustion of trying to maintain a polite lie. We navigate daily social chains and expectations, and over time, that friction builds up into a heavy layer of stagnation that feels impossible to shake. Psychoanalysis gives this feeling a specific name, Thanatos, or the death drive. It is a primal instinct toward contraction, stasis, and minimal movement, pulling us inward until we feel completely collapsed. Ancient Gnostics interpreted this heavy, paralyzing force through a different lens. They described the archons, inorganic authorities, and hidden rulers who deploy psychological manipulation to keep humanity distracted by material concerns and paralyzed by fear. Internal deadness is a symptom of an ideological deviation, a systematic suppression of your natural vitality that shifts your identity away from its true nature. To explain how we became trapped in this state, Gnostic cosmology points to Sophia. As the divine embodiment of wisdom, she experienced a cataclysmic fall from the upper realms of light down into the formless void. Driven by her anguish and her desperate longing to return to the light, her descent accidentally triggered the creation of the material universe, generating the physical world and the bodies we currently inhabit. This bronze figure shows the Egyptian goddess Isis, crowned with a sun disk, one of the primary historical manifestations of this divine wisdom. By presiding over fertility and the annual flooding of the Nile, she became the ultimate symbol of creative potential and authority. Look at this dark stone bust. Rulers of the Ptolemaic dynasty went to extraordinary lengths to adopt this specific iconography, presenting themselves to their subjects as the earthly, living embodiments of the goddess to legitimize their power. This mythology frames the descent into darkness as a sacred space for activation. It is the specific territory where you learn to reclaim sovereignty. Modern author Jennifer Rochelle Torres approaches this dark initiation through a framework she calls psychological alchemy. Instead of avoiding trauma, she uses the raw material of lived suffering to forge spiritual authority. This process relies on a somatic choreography. The physical body serves as the altar where the opposing forces of your psyche clash, the suffocating contraction of Thanatos against the urgent expansion of life. That expanding life force is Eros. Torres describes this uprising of vitality as a holy tongue of skin, a visceral, undeniable physical awakening that asserts your existence against the gravity of collapse. Because literal speech is too rigid to describe this internal war, the mind relies on metaphor as a creative mirror. It provides a language capable of expressing deep terror without mutilating the truth. When you wrap your trauma in myth, you separate the wound from your identity, holding the pain in your hands without being consumed by it. Through this creative reflection, the pain is externalized. A psychological space that once operated as a silent prison of exile transforms into a sanctuary where your soul can safely be witnessed. Torres maps this inner geography with distinct landmarks. The suffocating sorrow of the abyss and the rigid rules of the prison serve as the heavy, foundational pigments on the artist's canvas. Engaging with the shadows transfigures the underworld into a cathedral of obsidian and salt, a womb that provides the material for your continuous metamorphosis. Archetypal forces act as watchers in this space. You encounter the deep, grounding stillness of the bear, alongside the raw, coiled fire of the serpent. Balancing these immense opposing forces tempers the mind like a blade. You begin to forge a deeply integrated consciousness that logic and reason alone cannot access. Enduring that fierce psychological friction generates a third force. It is a dynamic, creative rhythm that emerges only when you refuse to break under the tension of light and shadow. Operating with this level of integration turns life into a living myth. You transition into a state of continuous evolution, where your identity and your creative work feed each other in a virtuous cycle. This graphic breaks down the legacy of Cleopatra Selene II, the orphaned moon. Taken captive to Rome, she carried her Egyptian heritage into the empire. By serving as the vessel for Isis traditions, she became the physical continuation of an erased feminine spirit. This internal self-creation mirrors the biological process of autopoiesis, where systems produce their own components. In the Vision 2069 framework, mastering this emotional intelligence builds the architecture for a collective shift, evolving the Earth's noosphere, the global sphere of human thought. The individual who navigates the labyrinth of their own psyche and integrates their fractures arrives at a singular, triumphant realization: I did not break, I multiplied. The shadows within you are not designed to destroy you. They provide the necessary friction to alchemize pain into purpose, igniting the generative fire of your own living myth.